Alright guys, welcome to another V3 Visuals video. In this video, we are talking about this guy here. This is the Sony A7 IV. We're changing up the format for this video because this is a camera that all of us have used daily as our A camera. It's my current A camera. We're actually using it to film Nav and Love's angle right now.
Yeah.
This camera itself is actually Love's A camera. It's not Nav's A camera anymore.
Yep, I upgraded.
Yeah, he's using the A7S III now, but it was his first full-frame mirrorless camera. So today we're going to be having a discussion about this camera. We're going to be talking about how it holds up in 2025. We're going to go over all of the pros about this camera and how we feel like it's not dated at all for 2025. And then we're going to go over all of the negatives and all of the cons and kind of
things,
like
the things that we want to see changed in the A7V.
Exactly. The A7V is right around the corner. It's going to come whatever in the spring. It's coming very soon. So we're going to go over areas where maybe this is a little bit dated. Maybe this camera's on death row. Maybe it's time to upgrade. Maybe you don't need to buy this camera anymore. So we're going to get into that. So the first thing we're going to cover, let's go over all of the positives first. So the first pro is the 33 megapixel sensor on this guy. I feel like this sensor is perfect for hybrid use. So what are your guys' thoughts on this 33 megapixel sensor?
We've taken this to California. We've taken this to Banff. We've traveled with it. We've taken many photos of each other. We've taken client photos, thumbnails, and it does a great job at photos. That 33 megapixel is super sharp. We've shot eagles with it. Overall, it's a great photo camera. I've had a great experience with it. I know you have too.
Yeah, we each have probably taken easily over 10,000 photos with the camera. So the sensor is perfect for photos. That 33 megapixel is solid.
Yeah, I loved it.
And then for video, sure, on your S3, you know, the 12 megapixel sensor is a bit better in low light.
That's why I upgraded.
It's a bit better rolling shutter. But there are some drawbacks to that is the photo performance. So this photo performance is excellent. And I think the video performance is still great.
You still get the 7K oversample, so you actually have one benefit. That 7K oversample, if you look at the footage coming out of the camera for both the S3 and the A7 IV, the S3 is actually sharper out of the camera. So I think it's a great plus.
And I don't think the low light on this is bad or anything either.
No, we've taken low light with it.
Yeah, so I'd say that's the first pro, is that the 33 megapixel sensor, I think, is perfect for photos and video. For that 50-50 hybrid, I think it's perfect with no real drawbacks. So, all right, let's get to the next pro. So the next pro is going to be the autofocus. Sure, some of the new Sonys now have the AI autofocus chip and it has a bit better autofocus. The A7V is probably going to have that new chip with better autofocus.
I hope so,
but
at least.
I think the A7 IV is not outdated at all in terms of autofocus, at least in terms of what we've used. Maybe Love is a better person to talk about this because you had the Sony A7C2 and that had the better autofocus, but then you eventually switched to this. So what do you think?
Outdated? I don't think it's outdated at all. It's definitely A7C2 has better autofocus. It has more subjects like cars. And the autofocus tracks the objects a lot better than Mark IV, I would say. But for the purpose we use, for bird photography or for client shooting and stuff, I don't think I saw any difference.
The regular face eye autofocus is great. The bird autofocus is great. I think for us, it's been fine. It hasn't been much of a downgrade.
No.
But then why did you switch to this then? What was your reason to go from the C2 to this?
The main reason I switched from C2 to Mark IV was the ergonomics.
So I think that transitions us perfectly to the next question. So again, the autofocus, not outdated at all. He downgraded the autofocus to this and he didn't feel like it's much of a downgrade. So the reason he switched was for the body. So let's talk about the hybrid body here. I want to say this hybrid body, I think it's excellent. I don't think it's outdated at all. The battery life on this camera is excellent. You have the 2 SD card slots with the 1 CF Express. Sure, maybe in the A7V, it'd be good if they gave us 2 CF Express slots, but I feel like this hybrid body's solid. One thing that this came out with was the switcher between photo and video.
Yeah, which the S3 doesn't have it.
With the S3 doesn't have it. It was an older camera.
I actually really do miss it.
Yeah, I feel like the hybrid body is, I just feel like it's really solid. I don't think it's outdated at all. I think if you buy this in 2025, it's not going to feel old or anything. Sure, they're probably going to add the new flip screen onto the A7V, but I mean, come on. For most people, this is still, I think it's still perfect. I think the hybrid body's great.
Viewfinder wise, do you feel like there's any real gripe with it? Do you feel like the viewfinder's still sharp? I know that that's something they've upgraded with the new cameras.
Yeah, like, sure, the A7V, maybe they'll make the screen a little bit better. I actually would wish that they made the screen a little bit better. The viewfinder's okay. I think the viewfinder's sharp. I don't think it really needs to be much better. But the screen, yeah, maybe the screen. But yeah, they'll probably refine it a little bit. But I still say the body's a big pro on the camera, that it doesn't feel outdated at all. Perfect.
Up to date.
Perfectly up to date for 2025. So, all right. The last pro we're going to talk about. Nav, what do you think about this one? Because we've shot, so this has 10-bit color. This was our first camera with 10-bit color. Our previous cameras before that did not have 10-bit color. This has 10-bit color. This camera came with S-Cinetone, which when it first came out, that was quite hyped. We've used S-Cinetone a lot. So what are your thoughts on S-Cinetone on this camera? What are your thoughts on S-Log? Let's talk. I think the color profiles are a big positive in the camera. I don't think it's outdated at all in that area. So what do you think?
When I switched to the A7S3, which of course is really well known for S-Log 3 in particular, I've been really impressed with it. With this camera though, we used S-Cinetone like
all the time.
Yeah, all the time. And S-Cinetone is great because it gives you that balance between the dynamic range and that customization in post, but also just by having that streamlined process, which you don't have to always spend as much time in post just nitpicking every little thing. You can literally just export it and it still looks great. So I really love S-Cinetone, and I think the dynamic range on this camera, while it's not as good as the cinema cameras like the FX3 or the A7S3, it's still really strong, and I feel like for most people they probably won't be able to tell the difference.
Yeah, and I mean, we've shot so many vlogs. Like, we took this to Yosemite National Park. We took it all throughout California. So many of our run and gun videos where we don't want to spend so much time color grading it, we've used S-Cinetone. And, you know, in post, we'll tweak it a little bit. We'll add some colors, but I think it's been so solid. So that is one pro to this camera. Like, S-Cinetone, S-Log 3, all the color profiles. In 2025, it's not going to feel outdated at all. So, all right, let's shift things up. Let's get to the negatives now. So areas where we feel like this camera really could maybe use some improvement, maybe a A7V Wishlist, maybe areas where it does feel a bit dated. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, let's talk about that 4K 60 with the APS-C crop, and it doesn't even have 4K 120. What's your guys' take on that? Because I think even when it came out, that was kind of a bummer. What's your take on that now in 2025?
It's one of the big reasons why I switched to the A7S3 in the first place. Like the A7S3, you get that 4K 120 with only a 10% crop, which is fantastic, and you get 4K 60 with no crop, right? I really think that that's something they can improve on, because I feel like this camera could do that. Like it could at the very least do 4K 120 with a strong crop and maybe 4K 60 with no crop. I really think they can improve on that with the A7V.
Yeah, like I have my B camera is the FX30. And sure, it has a big crop, but it can still do 4K 120. Like at the least, like you said, 4K 60 with no crop, and give us some sort of 4K 120.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be a 10% crop. It could be a strong crop, but at least you have the option, right?
Give us the option. All right. Next one. You know this one's coming. Again, this was something where it was a weakness on the camera when it came out. And that's the rolling shutter performance. What do you guys think?
we have seen it in all our vlogs and something. It's just super bad. That's why the main reason you bought your FX30.
Yeah, my FX30 has better rolling shutter than this. And the A7S III has better rolling shutter than this.
So definitely that's the one place where they need to make an improvement. I think.
If you guys are looking at this for YouTube, the only real gripe we had for it was that when we were walking around, when we were on our trips, it's just carrying it sometimes, panning it side to side, you could really get that jello effect.
And, panning it fast. When we were in California, I'm like sticking the camera out the window, and you can see that sort of jello effect.
It's shifting over. That really takes away from the experience, I think. So I think they can really improve on that.
Sony, if you're watching this, improve the readout speed in this camera.
Sony.
It's a bit slow. I think it's 33.
Yeah.
They could really bump that down.
Next negative. This one, I don't think it's as bad, but the stabilization on this one, it's not the best. Some of the newer cameras, they have like the A7R5, slightly better stabilization.
You could see a bit of a difference when I was seeing the pictures of the video side by side. You could see
especially run and gun and stuff. It's not the biggest thing, but again, Sony, just make the stabilization a little bit better. Our final negative about the camera, which we feel like Sony can improve on, the overheating. This camera, when it came out, again, people are making quite a big deal about it. It does overheat. We have the temperature sensitivity set to high, so it's never really like turned off on us since doing that, but it gets really hot. It gets hot. So
an hour continuous shooting, even in like cold temperatures, we found it with the screen in, it gets really, really hot.
Hot. Like that spicy sriracha you got going on.
It gets really hot, guys, and it's never turned off on us in a shoot, which is great. So we have nothing to really complain about, but we can definitely tell, like, if you guys are in the hot sun, if you guys are recording for the whole day for 6-7 hours, maybe, I think it can turn off on you.
It's just, you want that sort of reliability where you're not worried about it, you're not checking if it's hot, you're not keeping the screen open and feeling the temperature there. It's just you when you buy a camera, especially when you spend this much money on a full frame camera, you want something solid and reliable where you can take it out on the field, you can do client shoots, you can do weddings, and you just do not need to worry about the heat. And if you guys watched our FX30 video, that has an internal fan, no heating issues. If you watch our A7S III video, that's Nav's main camera, no internal fan, but it still doesn't have overheating issues. So, again, that's an area where Sony can improve on with the A7V. So that's our A7V wish list here. Is give us 4K 60 with no crop. Give us some sort of 4K 120. It would be great. Improve the rolling shutter, improve the stabilization, and improve the overheating performance. That's it. So then, what's your guys' verdict now in 2025? Like, we've talked about all the positives, we've talked about all the negatives. Is it like, how is it holding up in 2025? Do you feel like this is still a solid camera to buy, or do you feel like the negatives are starting to really show here? Do you feel it's getting a bit outdated? What's your guys' thoughts?
I definitely think it's a great buy, especially when the A7V comes out. The price has already been dropping on the used market for this guy, and you guys can pick this up for a great price. I think it's worth the money. If I didn't have the money to switch over to the A7S III, I would stick with this. I could keep this for years. It's sticky. The focus is great.
Is it spicy though?
I would say it's a spicy camera.
You heard it here. Nav said it's still a spicy camera. The guy literally is using sriracha as a mic. In previous videos, he's used like a cucumber. Like, I don't know. I think it's getting a little bit out of hand. I think we need to reel him back in. But like back to where we're. Sorry, we got distracted. Back to what we're talking about. I think if the negatives we talked about really are bothering you, if those negatives are really making you feel, or if they're making you feel a little bit disgusted, and you have the money, wait for the A7V and buy the A7V. They're probably going to improve on those things, and they're probably going to, the predictable things, they're probably going to give you the new screen and the new AI features and everything. But if those negatives are not the biggest deal to you, all the negatives we've mentioned, if they're not the biggest deal, I would say hold off, maybe even wait for the prices to come down and buy this A7 IV at an amazing price.
Yeah. I mean, I would say the same. I mean, if someone's buying a first full frame camera, I think this is literally the best camera they can buy.
Yeah. Perfect. Like such a solid hybrid camera. That is why I've just stuck to it as my main camera. Again, just photos, videos. If you do both, like we do photos when we go traveling, and then we do videos for clients. We do videos for YouTube. I think if you're a 50-50 split, it's still such a solid camera. So
enough with the spicy jokes. Let me settle it down here for an outro. Give me a second.
That was unnecessary.
The spin? Like, who does this guy think he is?
Alright guys, that's it for this one. If you guys get any value from this video, or if there's something that you think we missed, leave a comment. We appreciate the support. We would really appreciate if you guys press that subscribe button, press that like button. It really helps the algo. And we'll see you guys in the next one.
Like.